morning, everyone. Hi, everyone. This is Jewish Talk, coming to you live from Nassau Community College on 90.3 WHPC, also streaming on the iHeart and the iTunes app. We can be seen in the studios on my Facebook Live page and the Facebook right here in WHPC. This program, for your pleasure, is later archived on Spreaker.com. So hi there. My name is Rabbi Pearl. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. That all depends on when you're listening or watching. And I'm happy to be back. As you know, I took a trip to the land of Israel. And coming back on the El Al, it was Flight W. It was called 007. So when I went into the cockpit over there, and I said to the pilot, "Excuse me, sir, Habibi, tell me, 007, is James Bond here?" He looked at me like I was off the wall. He says, "For security reasons, we cannot tell you this." So, hello, everybody. I'm happy to be back. And, of course, we'll be recognizing those who are tuning in and letting us know they're watching us. So let's hello to Jonathan Wolf. Let's hello to Jean and to Jill and to Lori, to Dr. Hilshevsky. Thank you so much. And to everybody out there, wishing you the upcoming, of course, it is just a few days for just so many shopping days left now to Rosh Hashanah. So let me be the first to wish you, or amongst the first to wish you a very happy, healthy, and sweet New Year. For first, let me tell you a little bit about this coming Wednesday. On the American calendar is September the 18th, and the Jewish calendar coincides this month. It is also the 18th day of Elul, Chai Elul. What's so significant? Well, first let me tell you, in 1698, on this very date, this Wednesday, the 18th day of Elul, is the birthday of the Baal Shem Tov, Rabbi Yisrael Baal Shem Tov, who is the founder of the entire Hasidic movement. He was born in a small town in Ukraine in 1698, and on his 36th birthday, he was instructed by his teachers to reveal himself and to publicly disseminate the teachings of Hasidism. Of course, Hasidism draws itself from the mystical side of the Torah. And I just want to briefly share you some of the highlights of Hasidic thinking, which really inspires me on an ongoing basis. The fact, number one, Hasidus emphasizes and points out that there's a spark of godliness that is found in every creation. And how God loves each and every one of us. Whether you're a scholar, whether you're a simple folk alike, we all are loved by God. Another aspect that is emphasized in Hasidic teaching, the joy that a person must have in life, the simple faith in serving Hashem rather than escaping. Initially, his teachings encountered some rather fierce opposition from the scholarly elite, but many of those who were against what he was teaching eventually became his devoted disciples. When he passed away at the age of 62 on Shavuos in 1760, the movement that he'd founded, the Hasidic movement, became a vital force in Jewish life and still continues to be that way. But making it even more exciting, the same date, 18th day of Elul, Chai Elul, is the date when 47 years later, the first Chabad Rebbe was born. And the first Chabad Rebbe was Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi, and he was founder of the Chabad branch of Hasidism. And guess what? Amazing. He was born on the same date as the Baal Shem Tov. And this is very significant on many, many levels. And let me just share with you that Chai Elul, this coming Wednesday, the 18th day of Elul, which means Chai Elul, 18 is Chai in the Jewish wording. It means the life of El, Chai Elul. And I just want to share with you the fact that there is a beautiful... The fact that both these luminaries, both the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Hasidic movement in general, and the founder of the Chabad branch of Hasidism, were both born on the same day, we have the custom of wishing each other a good Yontif, and conduct special gatherings called Farbrengens. And one last thought on this is that from this coming Wednesday to the end of the year, as we all know, Elul, this last month of the Jewish year, is a month of devoted stock-taking and introspection. So we have a tradition that says that the last 12 days of the year, that means from this coming Wednesday, the Elul the 18th to the 29th, are specifically devoted to the 12 months of the closing year. So on each of these 12 days, we have an opportunity to reflect back on our deeds and achievements of its corresponding month. So have that in mind as we prepare ourselves for the new year. That use the last 12 days of the month to reflect seriously about what we did on each of the past 12 months. And now, my friends, I want to move on to a very important issue, and that is the general idea that I'm now focusing on is the to lift the veil of silence about mental illness. Yeah, and I must tell you, this is something that needs some addressing. And because there's always been what I would say is a carpet on the mental illness issue, and what I'm here to share with you today, is just very briefly, is that the carpet on mental illness does not need to be replaced. It just needs to be lifted and discarded. And I'm happy to tell you that yesterday in our shul, in our synagogue, we made it clear to everyone that when we make our Misha Beirachs, we make a special blessing for those who are unwell. Not only do we make it for those who are physically have physical ailments, but also even if a person has a mental illness, whatever it may be, from all kinds of depressions and all kinds of, mental illness covers many, many areas. They too should be included, and we must make it, more of a welcoming community to know that people who have members of their family facing mental illness or themselves, they are welcomed, and we are there to help them. Much more about this in the coming months, but I just wanted to make sure to let you know that it's very, very important for us to give, hope you don't mind these words, dear friends, but the same respect that we give to others with facing a physical ailment, the same respect must be given to mental illness as well on many, many fronts. So welcome everybody. I want to say hello to Lori Polanski, to Harold Kornfeld, all the way from Florida. Did I say it right? Florida. If I say Florida, nobody knows what I'm talking about. It has to be Florida. And of course to Abner Zarabi, welcome back. We missed you. And let me see who else has been watching here. And to Doug, to Louis Pushkin, wow. And we're very, very happy to have everybody not only watching us, but also to those listening to us. WHPC has an amazing coverage, and we're so happy to be part of the station. So I want to share with you a story of Rabbi Menachem Mendel. That was the third of the Chabad Rebbes, who's known as the Tzemach Tzedek, and whose son was seriously ill. So he advised to the person had a child who was sick, so he was advised to travel to the Tzemach Tzedek, to this Rebbe, and ask him for a blessing. So with a heavy heart, he made the difficult trek to the Rebbe. In response to his request for a blessing for his child who was not well, the Tzemach Tzedek pronounced 5 Yiddish words, which has been often quoted by the Chabad Rebbes ever since. And these words are, Trach gut, wird sein gut. Think good, and it will be good. Now the Chassid took these words to heart, and during his entire homeward journey, he strove to strengthen his trust in God and visualize a good outcome for his son. When he returned home, he was shocked to see his son completely healed and back to his normal self. Now, let's discuss this. For many people, this kind of positive thinking is a difficult directive to take very seriously. Think positive. What comes to your mind? It sounds like a naive content you'd find in some sort of information at a supermarket self-help book, or some amateur New Age podcast that's peddling these feel-good platitudes and sound bites. Besides, telling someone who's facing an illness, whether it's a physical or a mental, think good. Hey, isn't that kind of dangerous? It could set you up for a great disappointment. What if you visualize an excellent result and the positive outcome doesn't materialize? In fact, some scientists recently have pushed back against positive thinking, claiming that only focusing on the best outcome is not the most psychological sound approach to life. Why? Because given the high potential for failed expectations. In fact, a recent article in Scientific American suggests that imagining the worst outcome rather than the best is the most optimal way to live life. Because if you envision and plan for the worst case scenario, You will never be let down. You can only be pleasantly surprised if you end up with a positive outcome. I also found in Newsweek, they ran a much publicized story. You can check it out. Go to rabbigoogle.com and you'll see. The article is called "The Tyranny of Positive Thinking Can Threaten Your Health and Happiness." It reported that findings of motivational scientists who said that an insistence on positivity could cause people to blame themselves for their own sadness or failure to overcome adversity. However, the principle of think good and will be good has been and continues to be an integral aspect of Hasidic philosophy in general and a staple of Rabbi Schneerson, the Rebbe's outlook in life in particular. Now, can it be that the psychologists in these studies are addressing the ego, whose fragility they are concerned with protecting, while the Rebbe is addressing the soul, whose only desire is to sing and soar and be passionate about life? It would behoove us to dig a little bit deeper, to uncover the essence of what the Rebbes have been saying for centuries. What does it mean? Given all this evidence, as we were just discussing, how can you say to somebody, think good, it'll be good? So I'm going to take you back to 1963. And the Rebbe expanded on this philosophical and spiritual dynamic behind this teaching and this way of looking to life that think good will be good. And he began by asking the obvious question: on what basis should one believe that the outcome will be good in the face of any challenge, whether it's a material, a physical, or a mental issue? Isn't it presumptuous to assume that in every given situation we're always deserving of divine grace? And what of the basic Jewish belief that there is a divine order of reward and punishment that governs our world, making salvation dependent on righteous behavior? So what's this business? Think good will be good. So here's the Rebbe's insight, the Rebbe's response. When a person decides to place their trust in God, believing that their current crisis will be resolved favorably despite facing a bleak reality, they have, in effect, risen above their nature, which in turn elicits the suspension of the divine order in which only the righteous are deserving of salvation. God understands how difficult and even supernatural it is for a human being to believe sincerely, to the degree that he or she no longer experiences fear and anxiety, that an unpromising and even seemingly hopeless situation will have a positive outcome. We're human beings. Therefore, when a person, as a result, or even a reward for this extraordinary act of thinking good, guess what? God deems the believer, who may be otherwise undeserving of a positive outcome, this deserving of an extra measure of divine generosity in this instance. Ultimately, the power of thinking good, according to the Rebbe, is bound up with one's faith in God's ability to manifest a positive outcome. This is the key difference between what the Rebbes are suggesting and what the studies that I cited earlier on. Someone who doesn't place his trust in the infinite potential of higher power is basically defying their own limited thoughts. So that's my power. That's my thought. A person, certainly from within their own limitations, are limited. But if we allow ourselves and express this think good, be good as part of that power of faith that goes beyond our limitations of our thought, or our conduct, or what we may be deserving or not, then we suddenly enter into a new world. And we become, as a reward for being, so to speak, throwing ourselves to that world of faith, we'll have a positive outcome. So let me now explore a number of interactions in which the Rebbe articulates this fundamental concept. It's fascinating. And let me just pause for a moment to say hello to everybody listening and watching. We have so many people listening as well as joining us today. Hello to Lori Polanski and to Sean Novat. Oh my goodness, Sean, welcome. Looking forward to being at your great meeting tomorrow night with thousands of people. Debbie Zuckerman, good morning to you. To Doug and to Karen. And thank you all for your wonderful comments. And I encourage everyone after the program to take a look at our Facebook Live page and see the amazing, intelligent ideas that are being shared and from everybody. And please do that. So back to our interactions. This goes back to 1957. A young man from Israel received a letter from home saying that his father had suffered a heart attack and was in critical condition. At a time when overseas calls were rare, the young man's anxiety was deepened by the thought that his father may have already passed away. Devastated, the young man wrote a note to the Rebbe explaining the situation, ending with the words, "I don't even know what to think at this point." In this response, the Rebbe underlined the student's final sentence and wrote next to it, "Shocking!" Because the instructions of our sages in these situations is well known. Think good, and it'll be good. I await good news, says the Rebbe. A few tense days passed, and finally the young man reached his father by phone. How is father? He reached his mother, actually. And he said, how's his father? How's father doing? He's out of danger. When did this happen? And the response was Thursday night. So after hanging up the phone, the young man went to 770 for afternoon prayers. On his way out of the synagogue, the Rebbe turned to him and said, "Nu, do you have good news for me?" "Yes," he responded. "I just phoned home and was told that my father's out of danger." "Since when?" asked the Rebbe. "Since Thursday night." "And when did you begin to think good?" "When the Rebbe told me to do so," said the young man. "And when was that?" The Rebbe pressed on. "Thursday night." And the Rebbe concluded, "May such things never happen again, but you must always remember to think positively." In another instance, a chassid mentioned that he was due to have a very serious operation in a few weeks, and he asked the Rebbe for a blessing that the surgery be successful. The Rebbe said to him, "Instead of asking that I pray that the surgery be successful, you could have asked me to pray that you don't need to undergo the surgery at all." The chassid recanted, so to speak, "Rebbe, I would like to ask for a blessing that I do not need surgery at all." The Rebbe replied, "It's too late. I can only work with the faith you had when you entered my office. In other words, I can only work with the level of faith you have in God, not with the level of faith that I have in God." Let's move on to that, and the same idea. And I really appreciate the comments on our Facebook Live page, where we're receiving much comment thanking us for discussing this personal and sensitive topic. And it is something very, very important. And we must all work to become more knowledgeable on what is defined as mental illness, the different challenges. And let's move back to our think positive idea. Think good and it will be good. And it's not just a psychological babble, but it elevates the person to a new world, that he or she becomes available to amazing blessings that can actually override everything. So here's another story, basically. It's told in the name of Rabbi Shua ben Yamin Gordon. At a certain point in their lives, together with his wife, they faced serious challenges. At wit's ends, they wrote to the Rebbe for guidance. They drafted a 10-page letter explaining everything. On the day their letter arrived in New York, they received a call from the Rebbe's secretary with this answer: "Time and time again in your holy work, you have imagined that the situation you find yourself is at the end of the world. But when you saw how the situation flipped over, it became visible and revealed good. You must, in all cases, follow the command of the Tzemach Tzedek to think optimistically, and things will turn out well." And the Rebbe's prompt response was illuminating. And in the rabbi's own words, "This answer is a teaching I try to remember every day, that as bad as things may look, they looked bad last time too, but everything turned out fine." And there are many times in our lives when the worst outcome seems inevitable. How many of those times take a different turn from what we anxiously expected? For many of us, this is a recurring pattern of our negative thought processes. In the end, all the time spent stressing didn't do us any good, not to mention that it's actually bad for our health. Thinking good in the face of perceived adversity is helpful and healing on many, many levels. Let me continue on the same subject. I'm really into this, my friends, because I really am try to become more educated in the mental health issues, how to become more inclusive myself, more understanding. In fact, in our Chabad house, we host, every once a month, a special support group for people who have a spouse or a child or a member of their family facing mental health issues and how to deal with it. And more that we ourselves will be doing in a more public way. But it all begins with yourself. If we don't have the same respect for the mental health issues as we have for a physical ailment, forget about it. And that's the mistake. We must give it the same respect, the same dignity, and encouragement and inclusiveness, and to be a shul or a community or yourself, in order to become a first responder and knowing the signs of someone who may be facing these challenges, which also relate to suicide feelings, etc. You've got to learn what is a myth and what is a truth about it all. So let's go back to our subject about thinking good, and how it is not just a psychological babble, but is something very personal and very powerful. A person can actually change their future with their positive thinking. So here's another response to someone who had written several pessimistic letters to Rabbi Schneerson describing his life's challenges. And the Rebbe elaborated on the powers of both speech and thought to impact reality for good or its opposite. Just by the way, I don't know why this came into my head, but in Jewish, let me tell you what happened. On a Wednesday, I going to the bathroom, and a gentleman sees me for the first time after many months, and he says, hello, starts to talk to me, and I kept quiet. And afterwards I told him, please don't take this personal, but we don't speak in the bathroom. We don't say hello, we don't say shalom, we don't talk about anything. And he was curious. Like I explained to him, I'm not being disrespectful. I would never do that, not to respond to somebody. But I said, in the bathroom, you don't talk. And the reason is because speech is powerful, is creative. It's a godly ability that we have. And the bathroom is not the appropriate place to talk. So in response to your letter, from which this is what, again, this person, the Rebbe was telling him how his power of speech is and thought is so important, the Rebbe says the following. In response to your letter, from which it is clear that I have not yet been successful in inspiring you in a spirit of optimism, despite having told you on numerous occasions that according to the Jewish teachings, one should refrain from verbally introducing negative and melancholy ideas into the world, which is one way of averting the actualization of turning something. You talk negative, you're creating something. So stop with the negative talk. And this does not apply only to verbalization, which according to Hasidic teachings contains the power to actualize. And that's how the Rebbe was explaining. You stop with the negative talk about someone, about the world, and certainly don't on yourself. But not only words, but even thought itself has the power to actualize something. As we see from the teachings, think good, and it will be good. That means thinking is also powerful. If you think negative, well, who knows what. That's how powerful our speech is in a positive way, and certainly our thinking. In this letter, the Rebbe elucidates some of the Kabbalistic underpinnings of what it means to think good and will be good. And when the world was created, the process of making this world, where an initially spiritual idea and energy became manifest in this physical reality, is just a process. So the fruit of our experience and actions does not just appear out of nowhere. It comes from somewhere. It's rooted in our speech. As the Torah describes metaphorically how God made the world, He spoke and came the world. We all have that aspect of creativity through our speech, which is ultimately an expression that's contained in the thoughts that are planted in the soil of our souls. That's how powerful our speech is. That's how powerful even our thought is. So in our final example today of the Rebbe's application and elaboration of this teaching, we get a glimpse of the integral worldview that undergirds such a faith in the power of our thoughts to impact the world around us. So while I'm pleased to share with you the letter the quotation about God being the creator of the world, who also guides all of our destinies, this very good impression is weakened by the further tone the Rebbe said of your letter, because he was being negative, where you state that you want to be realistic, based on prognosis of physicians regarding your condition. I want to tell you first, and even from the realistic point of view, we must recognize the fact that very many times the greatest physicians have made mistakes in diagnosis. Moreover, in recent times, we see that new discoveries are made daily in the medical field with new wonder drugs and methods which have revolutionized the medical treatment. And the Rebbe goes on. Secondly, observing life in general, we see so many things that are strange and unbelievable that to be truly realistic, we cannot consider anything as impossible. Even medical opinion agrees that the stronger the patient's faith in cure and the stronger his will to get better, the stronger becomes his ability to recover. And I see that all the time as a chaplain in the drug rehabs and now in the jails and in the hospitals. Needless to say, this is not said in the way of negativity, but in as much, the Rebbe goes on, as by an individual divine providence, you have learned, the Rebbe said from him, and the importance of applying positive outlook. If we think about the aspects of the spiritual world that are necessary for creation, we see that everything has, we see how the world has, not to mention all the amazing medical and technological developments that have continued in our lives. So who knows what blessings are waiting to be revealed at any second. So the Rebbe points out there are levels of faith. A person may believe that God can create, but do not believe that God can heal. Come on. Inasmuch as the world itself is so miraculous, God can make other miracles for the person. There's so many things. So from all of this, my friends, we can begin to understand why the Rebbe took the concept of positive thinking so seriously. From a psychological, practical point of view, there may indeed be a risk or downside to thinking positive, as the person may be setting themselves up for a massive letdown if things do not work out as they hoped. From this perspective, envisioning worst-case scenarios might actually help avoid future suffering by managing one's expectations. However, from a spiritual perspective, this is precisely the challenge of faith. The exact opposite is true. According to the Rebbe, it isn't that we must manage our thoughts to conform to or protect us from reality. The truth is, whether we know it or not, we are molding reality in relation to our thoughts. So it is better to think good. May Hashem bless us all with good health and not have to discuss these issues. And there should be we look forward to a time there'll be no more illnesses, no more physical ailments, no more spiritual or mental issues, but a world filled with goodness and kindness. May I take this opportunity to wish everybody a wonderful day, a wonderful week. It's good to be back. Thank you for joining us on the radio, on Facebook, and looking forward to being with you next time. Thank you. A good year to you all.